Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the webinar. Today, the webinar is going to be really interesting. Today, we have, speaker here already has joined the call, Mr. Prasad Kantamneni. He's going to talk about, the importance of entrepreneurial skills being taught at an early age. Right from the early stages, why we are actually talking about entrepreneurial skills. Most of you guys have already, joined our metamorphosis sessions. Few of them have already got admits in metamorphosis school. So today, Mr. Prasad is actually going to talk about how the skills that you are going to, learn from the schools or from metamorphosis, how they are going to be applicable in your real life. Prasad, good evening. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for joining the session. Today we have got amazing, students. We have principals. We have parents. We have very good, players from the ecosystem as well who has joined this webinar, and we're all looking forward to hear from you. And most of the students already have got their entrepreneurial ideas. They already have their ideas. They've been working on the ideas, and also few of them have already got some market traction as well. And today, most of the students, they're all aspiring to become entrepreneurs. But one thing that they're all very curious to know is, can these entrepreneurial skills be applicable in different fields as well? Even if at all they do not want to set up their businesses, can these entrepreneurial skills be applicable in different fields? So this would be the context of today's session. Thank you so much again, once again, for joining the session. I am sharing your PPTs now.
Sure. Thank you, Pawan. So yeah, thank you all for taking the time off to come join us here today. And thank you, Pawan and team, for giving me the opportunity, because obviously this is one of my passions, and I want to make sure that I can share whatever I know. So just to give you a little bit of background, my name is Prasad. I've worked in the US for pretty much most of my life. And about 10 years ago, I decided that I wanted to take my skills and apply it to something in India. So my wife and I moved to India, to a village, to do some community work and see how we can apply what I knew in a village. And 3 years after that, I decided I think the best way to kind of help people was to actually set up a company. And that's what we did. So we set up a company, UX Reactor, which is about 6 years old, and it's based out of San Francisco. But then what is interesting is, today we are 6 years old, but we compete with companies like IBM and IKEA and all of those. At least as far as the design is concerned, we do probably just as good as work as anybody else out there in some of the best companies out there in the world. So to start off, I want to give a little bit of context. So there is a video that I've shared. If you could play that video, and then, I'd love to have people react to it.
All right, all right.
Yeah, I think we can stop here.
Sign up to Welcome.ai.
Yeah. So what is interesting is, a lot of us, at least when we were children, a lot of us, when we were thinking like, okay, I want to do programming, I want to be a computer scientist, I want to do so many other things. But what is interesting is today, what you've seen in that video is something that was done almost about 2 years ago, where somebody is literally drawing on a whiteboard and the software is creating all of the code and doing everything, right? So what is interesting is, so then what would a programmer do? What would you do if you learned programming, or what would you do if you learned computer science, or even medicine? Computers are actually helping diagnose things. Even legal systems, computers are actually saying, okay, I think you have an opportunity to defend yourself in this way, or this is what you need to say. So a lot of things in our world are getting simplified. They're getting automated. So the example that you saw of that video, earlier it would have taken us at least about, 3 or 4 days to develop that. And literally it took 44 seconds to develop all of that and write code, right? And that is really interesting because what it is telling us is if everything is being automated, then what kind of jobs and what kind of opportunities will we have in the future, right? And so as we think about what kind of opportunities, one of the things that comes to me is, one of the things that comes is the people that understand what product to use where, because you have computers that will automate your work, they'll simplify everything. But you need to somebody needs to tell the computer what to do, right? Somebody needs to tell the computer what is the requirement so that the computer can do it. And I think those are the opportunities in the jobs that are going to start coming up more and more in the future, right? It's not even that. Maybe it's not even a job. You want to be an entrepreneur. If you know what problem you're solving, you can actually have some computer automated for you and you can get going. So the idea here is it's not about doing what a computer is doing, but it's about doing something. It's about telling the computer what to do. And that is where the future is going to be. So yeah, so as I was saying, if you were to create a chat application, most likely what somebody would do is they would actually say, okay, I'm going to put your first name, middle name, email, and I'm going to make you enter your password 2 times, and then you can sign up, right? Now, what is interesting about that mindset is somebody told the employee, listen, you need to have a login screen. And so the employee designed the login screen, right? Now, if you think about it as an entrepreneur, right? So what would an entrepreneur do? The entrepreneur is thinking, listen, it is so painful to just enter all of this information. And then when I need to connect to somebody, I need to get their email address. I want to add it into my chat boxes and then, invite that person and add all these people into my group. So instead of that, what if I could simplify it, right? So if you go to the next slide, this is exactly what an entrepreneur did, right? And if you don't recognize it, it's WhatsApp. WhatsApp literally says, tell me your telephone number. I'm going to send you an SMS. And everybody that's in your contacts are automatically your friends. So you can send them SMSs automatically, right? Now, here's the interesting thing that happened as a result of this, right? If you go on to the next slide, just by doing that, right? WhatsApp, it started in 2009. It ended up having 450 million users, right? With just 55 employees, just 55 people did that, right? And if you're saying how much money they spent on marketing, it is 0 rupees, right? $0. They did not spend anything on marketing. And by the end of it, within, I think probably a year or two, Google offered them $10 billion to purchase it, right? And forget $10 billion, it's like Facebook actually decided I'm going to purchase it for $19 billion, right? All it was there was a person who actually sat down and he said, I don't like that login experience. I want to change it. I want to completely re-envision it. And all they did was they solved that login problem. And then they created $19 billion worth of opportunity, right? Now divide $19 billion by 55 people, 55 employees. You can very well imagine pretty much almost everybody has become a multi-millionaire, right? So that is what an entrepreneur does. An entrepreneur doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing business on your own, but you're solving problems, right? And these problems are creating so much value in the market that, the market is valuing you by giving you money and the recognition, right? So let's go on to the next slide, right? So here's an interesting thing. So this was one of my hypotheses that as I was looking at everything, I was thinking, entrepreneurs is like you need to teach, you need to go to an MBA place and you need to teach everybody how to do things and all that. And, when I was looking in the US, one of the most common things is, the children all get together and they learn to sell lemonade. So they have to figure out how much they want to sell their lemon juice for, what the price is per glass, what their profit is, and all that stuff they have to plan, right? And so when I went to the village and, technically, traditionally, they say like entrepreneurship is hard in India. When I went to the village, I was actually teaching in a school that had 6th standard to 10th standard children. And most of my students were 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th standard students. And I would actually just sit down with them and they would all come to me and they'll say, you know what, our parents are very poor. We don't have money to pay our fees. We have all these problems. So then I just sat down with them one day and then we just talked to each other and I said, what do you know that somebody else wants, right? Because each one of us is unique and special, that all of us have certain skills that somebody else wants. And that is the foundation of entrepreneurship, is if you can give what somebody else wants, you get money. And so they realized that they wanted to teach computers. They knew how to do computers. They wanted to go into villages and teach computers. And these are all children from villages, all 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th standard children. And they, by the time in 3 years, we actually taught 1,600 people, right? And they earned enough money every year to pay their fees by themselves. Their parents did not have to pay their fees, right? And that was mind-blowing. And so the one interesting lesson that I got out of it was, you know, young people are natural entrepreneurs. It's just that when we get older, we start becoming more and more afraid. We worry about what will somebody think, you know, what will somebody, what if my idea fails? What is the consequence of things? But all of you folks, you are in school, you have no fear. You just love solving a problem and you go solve it. You don't have the natural fears that I as an adult have. And I think you are all natural entrepreneurs, right? And the thing is, you know, it is important that we protect that mindset rather than take that mindset and kill it. And then after you become 30 or 40, then you decide, no, now I need to become an entrepreneur. I need to learn all those skills, right? It is better to start protecting it from today itself so that now you become a very, very successful individual as you get older rather than worrying about it tomorrow, right? So let's go on to the next slide. So this is the other thing, right? As an entrepreneur, what do we learn, right? So this is a little cartoon. And so this one person is going to his boss and saying, you know, it was my idea. You're not giving me credit for it. And the boss is saying, I know it was your idea, but I made the decision to use your idea and make it happen, right? So just like that, there's so many people who, when they get old, they will actually say, you know, I had that idea when I was doing this, and you know, now that person has implemented my idea and become a millionaire, right? The point is, we all say that. My argument is, you know, we say that because we don't trust ourselves. Because when I had that idea, if I was confident enough to say, no, I want to try it, I want to experiment with it, I would have implemented the idea and I would have succeeded. But most of us don't succeed because we don't trust our ideas. And that is one of the problems. Now, when you're young, you don't have to worry about it. You already trust yourself. You have the confidence. You literally learn how to trust yourself and implement your ideas. They may fail, they may succeed, but it doesn't matter, right? You, at the end of the day, you learn to trust your judgment. So as you get older, you become much more mature that way and you become much more successful. So if you go on to the next slide. The next one is, what do you learn is learning to take risks and succeed. So here's an example of two birds. They're sitting on the branch. One bird has a parachute and he's very scared of jumping off the branch because if he thinks that, you know, if he jumps off the branch, he will fall down. The other bird is like, why don't we try to fly without a parachute, right? And the point is, naturally, this is a little bit interesting because birds always fly. They anyways fly. But the point is, if we have natural abilities to succeed, we have the intelligence, we have the ability, we have everything, then why are we worried about taking risks? So when you're an entrepreneur, you learn to take risks. And if you take risks, sometimes you will fail, but there will be times when you succeed. So you cannot succeed if you're not okay with failure. So that is one of the key lessons that you learn, is it's okay to take risks. It is okay to fail, because when you fail, that is when you succeed. And so that is one of the things that you have to learn as an entrepreneur. And tomorrow, even tomorrow, as you go into your professional life, you may choose not to be a business person, but still, how do you come up with new ideas, right? People will not respect somebody who's doing what they're telling them to do, right? They will respect people who are actually changing the game, who are creating new ideas. And I think that is the one thing. If you learn to take risks and succeed, you are capable of creating new ideas. You're capable of doing new things. So if you go on to the next slide. So here's the other one, right? So you deal with ambiguity. So this is interesting. So this person is saying, pass me the mouse. And this girl is thinking, should I give the computer mouse or the actual mouse? What is he asking for, right? And so that is interesting, right? Because when we started, even like, 6 years ago, when we started the business, most of the design, most of the computer screens and all that were on computers, right? And mobile devices. Within 1 year, we had internet of the wearable devices. So you could have watches that were very smart and everything, right? All of them were connected to things. Within 1 year, you had Internet of Things. They didn't even have any screens, right? They were just microchips that were doing things for you. Within a year, you have augmented reality and artificial reality, right? So technology is changing so fast. The world is changing so fast, right? that if you are not able to handle what is going to change and how to handle it and how to kind of figure out how to win and how to succeed in a changing world, then we will get stuck, right? And I think as an entrepreneur, you learn to understand, you know, how to prepare for that changes and how to kind of win when the environment is changing, right? And I think this is really, really important when we start thinking about a world that is changing that fast. Here's the next one. If we go on to the next one, right? So this is very interesting. So in UX Reactor, I'll give you an example. We interview almost about, in the last 6 years, we've interviewed about 45,000 people. And out of them, we have selected only 70 people, right? Now, why is it that we are selecting so few people? Again, this is an employee question, right? One of the core reasons that I see that people do not succeed in their life is they come in and they say, sir, I did not succeed because my parents did not give me money. I did not succeed because my teacher did not like me. I did not succeed because my friends did not support me, or whatever reason, right? And people will give you hundreds of reasons why they will fail, right? And my argument is, okay, you will fail, but there are hundreds of reasons. But if you succeed, it is because you take responsibility for yourself, right? As an entrepreneur, if you have an idea, you have to take responsibility for the idea. You are the person that is making sure that your idea becomes a reality, right? And so if you start having that mindset, tomorrow in your life, you're never going to tell anybody else like, sir, I failed because of this reason. You're going to say, see, I failed because I made a mistake, right? I succeeded because I took the risk and I took the responsibility, right? So that is one of the core things that we also actually learn is how to take responsibility for our life and our career, right? If we do that, right, we become true entrepreneurs because you are now figuring out in terms of your career how to grow, right? Nobody is controlling your career. Nobody is controlling your life. You are in control and you are the person that's driving your life. And that is something that you need to think of as well. So let's go on to the next slide. Right? This is the other one, right? So what happens in entrepreneurship is, initially the world, you have so much information, so much data, right? So somebody will say like, okay, so let us say you want to sell a lemonade stand, right? You want to sell lemonade. So if you're doing a business model, initially, when you're starting off as an entrepreneur, you might say, okay, I'm starting the lemonade. I need to do a lot of advertising, right? But gradually, as you fail, you will learn, okay, it's not advertising. I need to put my place at a good location, right? Once you put it at a good location, then you'll realize, okay, I failed. Then you realize, no, I failed because the taste was not good, right? Then that's how, as you learn entrepreneurship, you start realizing that there are many, many things that you have to think of as you're creating a new product, right? And so that is one of the other things that entrepreneurship teaches you is to think about the big picture, right? And think about how to, not just think about, where should I put it or how should I market, but you're thinking about many, many different ways of solving the problem, and you're looking at everything. So that's one of the things what entrepreneurship teaches you is, what is my idea, right? If I have to do engineering, is it possible or not, right? And if it is possible, will somebody buy my product or not? So when you start looking at from those three perspectives, you're more likely to succeed in whatever idea you do. So let's go on to the next slide. So here's an example. So yeah, if you could go ahead and play it, let's see if it works. Okay, yeah, if you could pause that, that would be great. So if you think about this, right, a lot of us don't think about, I mean, for those that were not able to see the video, what this basically says is, if you could just go back, yeah, that's fine. And for those of you that weren't able to see the video, the challenge was, how do you get people to use dustbins? And so what this designer did was they actually put a sensor inside, and when you throw something, it will make a sound effect like it's a very, very deep dustbin. And so people started becoming very curious and they started throwing more more stuff into the dustbin. And so what it is, what I'm trying to say is, you know, for an entrepreneur, no problem is too small. Every problem is an opportunity. And when you solve every problem can become $1 million opportunity. So that is where it is. So, you know, the idea that, you know, we can only solve the big problems, solve all the entrepreneurship teaches us to be humble. Because when you are humble, you can solve all kinds of problems and you can create market opportunity. And so that is also one of the things that I would say is, you know, you have to keep in mind is like, nothing is too big a problem, right? Nothing is too small a problem. Everything can be solved and everything is an opportunity. So I think that's it for my presentation. So I'd love to take your questions and, see what you guys have.
Yeah, already we have got a few, few hands that have been raised. Tirth, what we can do is, guys, I mean, there is a Q&A session. Please drop your questions in the Q&A session. And also, I'm just going to see Pramarth. Okay. Pramarth, I think you have a question and you can ask what your question is. Pramarth, are you there?
Thank you, Shreyas. I'm reading the comments as well.
Okay. Yes. Q&A, yes. Arjun Pulipaka has asked one question in the Q&A box. How to start a company? I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think how to start a company, there are two answers to that, right? One is, how do you practically start a company? Which is, you know, you have to go get a lawyer or, you know, you get a chartered accountant who will structure your company and set everything up. But there's also this other component where you're thinking about what is your product that you're doing, right? Who are the people that you want to help? Who are the people that you're creating a product for? Who is your team, right? Can you test your product? Before you invest a lot of money, can you test your product quickly and see whether it is making money or there is a need for it, right? So there are a lot of different steps. So the idea is, you know, there are different kinds of companies as well, right? There's a service company where you're solving somebody's problem. So somebody wants coding, you can start a company that say, I have 5 engineers with me, we will code for you, right? So we are giving you people, that is your product, right? Or you can say, I see this problem in my school or whatever, and you're saying, okay, now let me go test it, right? So a classic example, in fact, there was, I forget the name of the company, but there's this gentleman out of Bangalore. He was just a 19-year-old kid. And I shouldn't say kid, he's a 19-year-old entrepreneur. So nobody is young, right? I mean, you can be young or old, you're an entrepreneur. So what he was thinking was, I'm a part of this school, right? I want to have a t-shirt that has my school's name on it, so I can be proud of it, right? And so he was thinking about it, and then he went out and he started printing t-shirts, and he went to his friends and said, would you buy it? And he invested, I think, maybe about 2,000 or 3,000 rupees. And immediately everybody in his school started ordering more and getting more. And then he realized a big opportunity. Then he went to another school, he went to a third school. And then he didn't bother about setting up the company first. He bothered about validating his idea first, right? And as soon as he did that, now today he's doing multiples of millions of dollars of business out of Bangalore, where he's doing pretty much every college that you know in India is actually going to him to print t-shirts, mugs, caps, and all those things. He's the one who's doing it, right? And he started when he was 19 years old. So the point being is, how to start a company is, I would say, number one, right? Take an idea that you care about, that you're passionate about, because I can guarantee you that there'll be days that you will be good at, and there'll be days when you'll be miserable because nobody's paying you value, nobody's respecting you, everybody's criticizing you. So if you believe in your idea, you won't care what anybody else says, right? and then just get going. Just start it, experiment with it. And then if it gets you money and it gives you traction, then go ahead and create a company and run it out. So that is my advice for you.
Yeah. So there is one more interesting question from a parent, I guess, Salil Deshpande. He asked how to prepare the kids to digest the failure.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the question: how to prepare the kids to digest the failure.
Yeah, this is a super good question, right? I think it is the first thing as a parent is we have to reflect and say, what is our responsibility to our children, right? Is our responsibility to make sure that, our children will never fail, right? Because if the kid is falling, then you come in and you hold them up and you say, okay, you're not going to fail. Or is our responsibility to make them fall down and you say, okay, it's good. You fell down, stand up, you can do it. But I believe that our responsibility is the second part, right? Our responsibility is not to, make sure that the kids don't fall. Our responsibility is to make sure that the kids fall as many times as possible for as long as we are alive, right? Because we are not going to be there, forever, right? So if the children are falling when we are around, we can be there to help them stand up again. We can dust them up. We can give them confidence and get them going, right? I'll give you a simple example, and this may sound a little bit heartless, but this is at least my philosophy of raising. I have a 2-year-old child, and she was, I think, about a year and a half, and she went under the table. Now, my mom's reaction at that time is, oh, if she stands up, she will hit her head. And my reaction is, if she hits her head, is it going to kill her? No. Is it going to maim her? No. Okay, that's fine. Let her stand up. She's going to hit her head, and then she's going to realize, okay, I don't stand up again. She did that 3 times. She hit her head, and then she came out. I rubbed her head and I consoled her. After that, she doesn't. She knows where the height is. She knows what her head is, and she knows how to do it. So my point is, the one thing, and the other thing also is we have to learn to not micromanage our children. And so this is also something that I've seen when we do, or at least I've been a participant in, Pawan's programs, is sometimes parents come to me and say, why did you not give my child the first prize? Or why did you not do this? Or why did you not do that? My point is, that's okay, right? But it also tells me that you're too invested in your child's success, right? Don't be invested in your child's success, right? It's okay if the child fails. You can just say, you know what? Stuff happens. I might be biased, or maybe something happened. I don't know, right? You have no idea. But, when your child grows up, you have no idea what kind of circumstances your child will face, right? So the best way in that kind of situation is, yes, you can, of course, go to a judge or jury member and say, tell me what happened, but don't do it in front of the child, right? And then when you go back to the child, yeah, you didn't win. It's okay, right? The other thing is, don't do your projects for your child. Don't push your child to do one project or the other, right? Let your child pick up something that they're passionate about, because that's the other thing is failure is digestible if they're passionate and the child cares about what they're doing. So that is also what I would say is, like, do not force them to kind of, say, take this project to them. Even if it's selling lemon, it doesn't matter. They're going to learn, they're going to fail, they're going to succeed. So that's what I would say is, it's actually learning to step back and let the child succeed. I think that is the opportunity there.
Yeah. So there is one more interesting question related to AI. So they said, they asked, in the coming age of AI, how do you think artificial intelligence would help in process of entrepreneurship or help us to be a better entrepreneur?
These are really good questions, I must say, Pawan. So, this is actually one of my responsibilities as a design company. We work with companies across the world in designing their next-gen projects. And one of the things, as I realize, is what is AI going to do? How is AI going to change our world, right? Yeah. And in order to understand that, I think we need to step back and look at the past, right? In the past, when we used to learn, we used to have what you would call a Gurukul system or an apprentice system, right? So if you go to Konark or some of the masterpieces, right? This person built Konark, a complete temple without CAD/CAM, without any computers, right? They built a masterpiece that even today, you can look at every small statue and it's a masterpiece in itself, right? And even today's engineers cannot do that. And the reason is very simple, right? That was the age of craftsmanship, right? What that meant was somebody wanted to be a sculptor. They will go to the master sculptor and say, listen, I want to learn how to make sculptures, right? And the master sculptor would say, okay, I'm going to teach you how to do that. And whenever I get a contract from the king or wherever, you will come with me as my team. you will work for me, and through that practice, you will learn how to become a master, right? And that is fundamentally how we learned in the past, right? Now, suddenly when industrialization came in, right, machines were standardizing everything. They were doing things much faster, right? And so the education system, everything changed from that system, right? So the education system went to, you're not going to apprentice, you're going to go to a school and you're going to learn A, B, C, and D, and that's it. Your creativity is not required. You're not required to think outside the box. You just deliver what you've been taught to do, right? And so that is what our school system has been, right? Now, this generation that is in school is going to be very, very different, because once AI comes, all of the standardization will be taken care of by the AI, right? So now we need to go back to becoming a craftsman, to tell the AI how to do something differently, right?
Yeah.
And that is the opportunity that I say, as we move into the age of AI, it is about focusing on our creativity. It is focusing on understanding the context. It is focusing on understanding people, right? Because if you do not understand people, if you do not understand what is required in the market, you would never be able to innovate. I think what AI has done, a short answer is, what AI has done is simplified a lot of the painful things that the industrial age created, right? Now we can truly be creative and solve problems that, that we are capable of solving, because we have the natural intelligence and entrepreneurship, at least the programs that, Pawan is doing. I think these are fundamental to allowing us to break out of our curriculum and explore all the other things that we can do when we are younger.
So do you see that as a threat for the employment? I mean, in future, especially this AI and all, we're all talking that, the robots are going to take away a lot of jobs, or these natural disasters like, say, COVID-19 and all, they're going to take over the jobs. So one common question that I keep listening from the students is, if at all we cannot employ anyone, or if at all they're not equipped, or if at all they're not adaptive to the technologies, whom shall we employ later? Because we are all going to be future entrepreneurs. How the employment is going to be, how the employment generation is going to be.
See, I think that is very interesting, right? So even when we came, like, I've worked all my life in the US, right? When we decided to set up a design company in India, we could not find a single designer that we felt was good enough for us, right?
Yeah.
Because we didn't want to be, doing digital coolie work, if you think about it, right? So because somebody sends you the work and you do all the pixels and all that, we didn't want to do that. We want to innovate. We want to create new ideas that nobody else has thought about, right?
Yeah.
And so we actually had to take a very painful decision, and we said, no, we are going to start a training program first, right? So we set up our own training program where people have to train for about 6+ months, right?
Yeah.
Now, my argument is, and this is also very interesting. Now we are opening an office in Colombia. Now for 45,000 people, if we interviewed and selected only 70 people, right? When we are setting up in Colombia, I realized that we are interviewing 10 people and we like 6 people.
Yeah.
Right? So it is not that we are that selective, right? Unfortunately, our education system is struggling to deal with this new paradigm, right?
Yes.
And that is what the challenge is. So I would say, yes, people are going to be a challenge. Recruiting is going to be a challenge. But that is also the other thing. With COVID-19, everything is online, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether you have an employee in Colombia, whether I have an employee sitting in New York, whether I have an employee sitting in, Philippines, which, by the way, I have team members all around the world. I want to get coding done. I have somebody in Philippines who does it for me. I don't care.
Yeah.
Right? And so this is creating many, many opportunities. If you think about it, yes, it is a risk at one level. Okay, you people will lose jobs, right? But if you think another perspective, right, I'm actually paying the person in Philippines the same amount I would pay somebody in the US, because of the quality she's delivering. So if somebody is able to deliver the productivity of somebody equal to the US, why don't I pay them equal to the US? So what is going to happen is the opportunity to earn more, our salaries are all going to be different, because now we are going to be in a global talent war. Every company is desperate for talent, the talent at that level, right? And if you can prepare yourself for that opportunity, if you can prepare yourself to be an entrepreneurial thinker, right?
Yes.
You have created opportunities for yourself.
Yes, and I hope age is not a barrier for all of those. Yeah.
No, because we continuously reinvent ourselves, right? Because if we get too attached to, like, this is who I am, this is my ego, we cannot do it.
Yes, yes. And one question from our, MSc student, Metamorph School of Entrepreneurship student, Mania. She asked, how to effectively market a seasonal business. I think she has an idea, which is completely into the seasonal aspect. I mean, she, sells related to the festival, all the accessories related to the festivals. She sells those. So she asked, how to effectively market a seasonal business.
So that's a very interesting one, right? So I'm going to assume that you have an accessories business, and wherever you have festivals, you are going to go and sell. But then when there are no festivals, you have no sales. Is that right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. So the interesting thing is the problem with that kind of model is you are not top of mind, right?
Yeah.
I might go to, a festival, I might purchase something from you, right? And when I step away from you, like a week later, I might not even remember you, right? And so as an entrepreneur, your biggest challenge is making the other person aware of who you are, right? Yes. So really simple things that you can do is don't market the product, market the story.
Yeah.
So a classic example is, you can say, here's something that I'm doing for you. Or you can say, by buying this, you're actually helping a student, get an education, maybe, right? Or what is the purpose? So if people will not remember, like I bought it, they will not remember. But they say, I bought this, and they remember the story behind it. So every time they show that product to somebody else and they tell them the story, it is top of mind, right? They're proud of buying that product. Correct. The other thing, right?
Yes.
Collect their contact information. If you can, collect their contact and say, like, when I have new products, I'll post it, right? So that's a way that you can send periodic contact information. You can send emails and things like those, right?
Yeah.
The third thing you can do is think about creating a website, right? That's one of the most simplest things, and that is today it's like absolutely essential to do that. And in fact, most of the website, products is super easy. In fact, WordPress, which is a product that's been created, was actually done by an 18-year-old entrepreneur, right? So, and it's like one of the most popular content management systems. So it is, you don't need to learn coding. You can just download it and, put all your products in there and you're ready to go, right? The other thing is, you can also think about, in addition is you can think about creating some kind of traceability or opportunities, right? Partnership with people, right? Where if somebody is really excited about what you're doing, you can make them your partners. So this is what you'd call the Amway technique, right? Where you say, I have 10 friends and they're going to sell in their community. So it's a little bit more of a partnership model. So these are all different ways that you can get people to think about the product that you're creating and have them be proud of purchasing your product.
Yeah. All right. I think it's a very good input that you've been mentioning that, the recall value should be really good for any customer. The recall value should be there. And that definitely will happen through a lot of content management systems like WordPress, or there is Bits platform that is there these days.
Yeah, and there's also another one which is called No Code, right? Which is literally, it's awesome, right? So if you have some time, Google No Code platforms. You don't really need to learn coding. This is again, code that will do the job for you. You all you have to do is tell the program what you want, and so you can literally just put it together and execute on it.
All right, we'll take last 3 questions. I think one very interesting question from Vaibhav Vardhan has asked. Let us say we introduce entrepreneurship as a curriculum for kids of grades 6 to 10. How can we evaluate them? How do we encourage them? Marks is the first thing that comes to the mind, but can different aspects of entrepreneurship be quantified for kids? What could be the quantification of entrepreneurship for the kids?
Yeah, see, I totally do not believe in marks, right? Grading kills students, and this is something that I fundamentally realized after having, been exposed to, multiple education systems around the world. I've seen the education system in US, India, and Colombia, right?
Yeah.
And the thing I realize is, until the 9th standard, our children are amazing, right? They are innovating, they are going out and doing stuff, because imagine we stopped playing when we got into 10th standard, right? We stopped playing sports. And that's where we learn leadership, right? So something happens between 10th standard and when we finish engineering, where it completely destroys our ability to think, right? And that is what the industrialized education system is, right? So I think the perspective when I say to answer is marks is not the answer, right? There are interesting metrics, like how many ideas can you come up with in 10 minutes, right? Can you take an idea and go deploy it, right? How many ways can you launch the idea, right? Can you reward failure, right? How many different ideas did you do and fail, right? Can you actually present all the ways? So these are all ways that you can actually think about rewarding people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's also not that, right? We also have to take away judgment from failure. That is absolutely, like, this is something that I find I find it very hard, because, when we do these competitions of entrepreneurship for children, at one level, I think it's important to recognize the ideas, right?
Yeah.
At another level, it's also important to recognize all the people who did stuff that did not succeed, right? And somewhere, it's like, the kid always sees, like, that guy went to the finals, I didn't go to the finals, so I'm negatively reinforced for failing, right? And I think we have to really think about the subtle components of what we are messaging and how we are messaging to kind of, yeah, I might fail 20 times, but the 21st time I might make a hit, right?
Correct.
And I think that is the one thing that we have to also realize, right?
Okay.
And there was a very interesting book that I read where they did this study between successful people and unsuccessful people, right? Who did business. And they said, what was the difference between successful people and unsuccessful people? So what is interesting is, when they did the analysis, they said, see, you will hit two kinds of problems. One kind of problem is a speed breaker. One kind of a problem is a circle, right? If you hit a speed breaker, you just have to do the accelerator, you'll go to the other side. The circle is, you keep going in circles. No matter how much you accelerate, you'll still go in circles, right? So smart entrepreneur is somebody who can understand there's a speed breaker versus a circle, right? So my argument is, can we teach children to recognize a speed breaker versus a circle?
Yeah.
Right? And if you can teach them just that one skill, they will not make mistakes. The successful entrepreneur is the person who does more experiments per unit time is going to be more successful, right? And the person who does not give up when they hit a speed breaker, right? Or the person who doesn't accelerate when they hit a circle.
And yeah, I've very first time when I met you, I've talked about this also, the kind of recruitment process that UX Reactor has. Mm-hmm. So if at all you can throw some light on, what is your recruitment process? Because you are talking strictly that, you do not consider marks or grades amongst the employees. What is the first thing that you see in the employee?
Actually, our recruitment is completely changed.
Yes.
Right? Okay. Today, we actually have artificial intelligence that's doing our recruiting for us. Right? Oh. We have machine learning models where we give children a bunch of tasks, right? Or students a bunch of tasks. They play these games for an hour, and we can predict what the probability of success is in an ecosystem. Right?
Yes.
And so that is, and again, there's a slight difference between how we could apply that to you versus apply to us, right? For us, we are a business, so we have to take people who are most likely to succeed, right?
Yeah.
You have the luxury of training people to succeed, right?
Yeah.
And so that is where this opportunity is. The same machine learning models could potentially be used to kind of, drive your systems to tell people, okay, this is where you need to improve. These are the opportunities you need to kind of move forward on, right? And I think that's where it is. But at a very high level, when we interview people to succeed, right? I mean, the kind of people we bring in are a couple of things, right? The first thing, we bring somebody who is willing to take responsibility. All the items that I showed in my deck are the things we look for when we hire somebody, right? In fact, anybody that leaves our company usually starts their own company, right? They're entrepreneurs. And if they cannot do their own company, that's fine. We can help them, right? We are all like a part of the same ecosystem, right? Yes. But at the end of the day, we're looking for people who are willing to take responsibility for their work. We're looking for people who are willing to fail and execute, because you cannot create world-class products if you're not afraid to take risks, right? Correct. And we are looking for people who are humble, because if you have this ego and this pride that I'm smart, my father is rich, whatever, 10 different reasons, I cannot teach you anything, right? Yes. And so those are the kinds of mindsets that we look for. And right now, machine learning kind of recruits most of that for us.
All right. That's really great. So last two questions we have. So what are the legalities behind starting a business as a minor? If all you can help that.
To be honest, I do not have an answer for that. I have not done enough research around that. So I would not do justice if I answered that question.
Yeah. Anyways, we are going to bring more, lawyers as well as our speakers. I think they'll be able to help to answer that question. And one question, last two questions we'll take. How to get trustworthy people or team for our company? How do we trust people to bring on board them?
See, I'll tell you something, right? you will never, again, this comes back to risk, right?
Yeah.
You will
Yeah.
never be able to find perfect people, trustworthy people, right? In fact, some of my team members, right, when we started the company, have
Yeah.
actually stolen close to $100,000 worth of business from us, and they left, right?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Right? I mean, I have got a lot of experience, and even I've been cheated,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So one of the things you have to understand is, you know, people will cheat you, right?
Yeah.
You will go wrong in your decisions. It's okay to go wrong, right? Because as long as you understand there are more good people than there are bad people, right? You will have the confidence to succeed, right?
Yeah.
So out of, to be honest, I have 70 people that I've interviewed, they're about, of them, they after our training, about 60 people have joined our company, right? Out of 60 people, if you ask me, how many people actually did bad things, right?
Yeah.
I would say maybe about 6 or 7 people, right? And so that is 10%, 90% were amazing, right?
Yeah.
So I think it is important that you have to learn to talk to people, you have to learn to judge people. So that's again another thing. The more people you talk to, the more people you work with, and then you may fail, you may succeed, right? You will get that experience, right?
Yes.
If you see myself as an entrepreneur, so I've talked to probably about 25,000 people, right? I've coached maybe about 1,600 to 1,700 people, right? So
Yeah.
when I have that much experience, I can usually tell now which person is trustworthy and which one is not, right? But
Yeah.
the only answer to that is you have to take a risk. You have to understand that 10% of people will be bad, but 90% will be good, right? If you treat the 90% of the people like thieves, they will not want to work with you, right? So my suggestion is go with an open heart, trust people, but at the same time, make sure you have your checks and balances. If it fails, it fails. It's okay, right? You will learn and you'll move on. And the more you fail when you're young, the more you will the more you will succeed when you're older.
Excellent. Excellent. And the last question is from Abhishek. He has asked how to deal with criticism when our idea was not accepted or we get huge losses.
How to deal with criticism, right?
Yeah.
Let's actually talk about that, right? You're an entrepreneur, right?
Yes.
Who is the judge of your product, right? Is it some jury that is sitting somewhere, or is it the market, right? If you let some judge, like, I have been a judge, right? And I am judging based on my opinion and what I understand of the world, right? So at best, I can give you my feedback, but I cannot say you are not going to be successful, right? So the one core thing that you have to say is, are you confident about what you're doing or not, right? If you're confident, take it to the market, right? Don't let a judge or don't let some award ceremony tell you that you're going to win, right?
Correct.
And this is the fundamental thing. You just take it to the market. If it fails, right? And the other thing that you have to think about is, this is one skill that I think you guys need to learn. And I don't know if Pawan's program incorporates this, but it is what you would call is sprints, right? In design, we call it design sprints, right? So what that means is, what is the cheapest way that you can experiment with your product, right? Yeah. And if that is one skill, if you can build, then you can literally do 20 different experiments and you can figure out whether it's working or not.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's a much longer topic in terms of how to learn that skill and all that. But I think my answer to you is, criticism is just that, right? It is somebody's opinion, right? At the end of the day, you succeed or fail because the market likes your product or doesn't like it. So take it to the market, test it out.
Yes. So in our sessions, we talked something called minimum viable product. How do you test with minimal features and, get into the market and get some feedback from the customers or the potential customers.
Nice.
That's what we generally do. All right. So anyways, I think these are some of the questions we could answer, but there are a lot many questions, I still hope that, we have some time, but definitely I'll pass on the questions to you. Maybe I'll just send a written description of your answers to.
I have some time, but again, it's up to you. So I have at least about another 10-15 minutes.
Okay, we'll take a couple of questions. I think from Isaac. I think there was one question from Isaac. I'm just reading those questions. Okay. Regarding YouTube, they said, okay, one question is, how do you think entrepreneurship contributes to the economy of the region?
Interesting, right? So there is a very interesting metric, right? In terms of employability, right? So, before I became an entrepreneur, I used to think, yeah, what does an entrepreneur do, right? Because an entrepreneur essentially looks out for their own interest, right? But that's not actually true. When I started the company, it was because I had an idea and we wanted to see, like me and my partner, we both had this idea and we want to see whether it will work or not, right?
Yeah.
But very quickly you realize that, because you have that idea, now suddenly 10 people trust your idea and they're working with you. They're trusting their career in your hands, right?
Yeah.
So it is not about your idea anymore. It is about the people that trust you and they're working with you every day, right?
Yeah.
So you are actually helping build their careers. You're teaching them new stuff. You're actually paying them money. You're generating money so that you're paying them and they're taking care of their families, right? They're about for every person that you invest in, that's taking a salary, it's actually paying about 5 or 6 people, right?
Yeah.
Not just that, right? It's also like, this person is going to go to, let's say, a market and they're going to buy products, right? So at the end of it, entrepreneurship is the core for running anything, right? It is the core because you're seeing a problem and you're solving it. You're making things cheaper. You're making things easier. You're making things better, right?
Yeah.
This is what entrepreneurship is all about. If you think about it, before, if you had to fly, you had to be a millionaire, right?
Yeah.
But some entrepreneur decided that no, we can actually do mass flights and we can have bigger aeroplanes, and then you can bring the cost down so that everybody in the country can fly, right? So when you think about it, entrepreneurs make technology accessible to you. So in the beginning, a computer was probably worth a lot of money. Average people could not buy it. Today, each one of us have a cell phone that is more powerful than all the computers in World War II put together.
Correct.
Right? So those are the things. Entrepreneurship helps us evolve as a human species, right?
Yeah.
It helps us evolve as a society. It helps us create employment. It helps us learn new skills, right? Because if there was no data and if there was no design company in India, how will our country learn design, right? If there was no data analytics person in India, how will our country learn to be number one in data analytics, right? So at the end of the day, entrepreneurship is helping so many things. And this is the other thing, right? If you think about the kind of business, the employment that people generate, there's this government report in the US government that says majority of the jobs are created by small businesses and startups. They're not done by big companies, right? It is the barber that hires 3 people, right? Because every neighborhood needs a barber, right? It is the local kirana store that hires 5 people, right? So that is where you're creating employment. So there's no such thing as a big business or a small business. Everybody started small and they went big, right?
Correct.
And it's the system. Whether you're small or big, you're making big impact to society.
Yes. Yes. And last question is maybe about your journey, I guess. So, sir, how did you start your company and scale it to this level? So, if at all you can give background of UX Reactor, that would be great.
So I think for us, we were, see, there's 2 ways that you can look at business, right? One way is, see, I want to make money, so I'm going to get into business, right? The other way is, I see this problem and I want to solve this problem, right? So when we started our company, we had a vision and we said, we think the way design is done is fundamentally wrong. And that design should actually be, telling the business how to solve, making the business kind of grow, right? And that's where you need a completely different mindset. So that was our vision and our dream, right? So when we did that, so then, and of course, we both the founders, both Satyam and I, have done multiple businesses before, and some businesses we failed, some businesses we succeeded, right? At 2 different levels. And from each of those failures, we have learned different things. And that's how we came down to this business, right? And so when we started this business, what was interesting was we said we want to be, we had a goal. By 2022, we want to be one of the top design companies in the world. That was our goal, right? And we said, whatever it takes, we're going to hit that. And so we said, okay, if we want to be one of the top design companies in the world, then we don't care who we are selecting. We will select the best and the brightest, whether they are from Polytechnic, whether they are from engineering, whether they are BCom fail, it doesn't matter. Whether I have students who are polytechnic students. I have team members who are who have failed in their 10th standard also, and they've joined me, and they're doing amazingly well. They're working on international projects and doing stuff, right? Wow. So that is how we recruited people for the best talent and the best mindset, and we gave them very, very tough training. At the end of it, because again, both Satyam and I are very well established in our industry. So Satyam used to be the managing director for design for Citrix, and I used to be, working for Yahoo at that time. And so if you think about it, when you search in Yahoo or Google, you see the search suggestions come down below. So that was a feature I created. I have a patent on the components of that, right? So pretty much everybody who uses internet around the world uses a feature that I've created, right? Yes. And so when you have those kinds of mindsets, people know you in the industry, people respect you. And so automatically, what I tell my team is, see, I'm giving you my name. Nobody in the world will give you business just because you've graduated from some training program. They will give you business because they trust Satyam and Prasad, right? Yeah. And I am giving you business because I trust you, because I trust your capability, right? So that is how we started. And so we have a lot of connections in the US, and we basically said, okay, we're going to go solve some of the most difficult problems out there. And so in the beginning, what was also interesting was there'll be people that will come to us, I want you to make this website. I want to do this. And this is also an interesting trick in business. It is not important what you say yes to. It is what you say no to that is more important. Because everybody will have different ideas. If you say, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, then you can focus on one idea. And so a lot of people came to me and said, I want to make websites. So we said, no, we don't want to make websites, right? Even if we have no money, even if we are making no revenue, we will not make websites, right? And so we were very, very clear what kind of projects we're going to do. And we said, okay, if you cannot make websites, then what do? You can control the work you get, or you can control the money. So when we started, we used to work for, I think, about $2 an hour. Okay. $2 an hour is literally 18,000 rupees a month, right? So it was not a lot of money, but we said, if we take some of the most difficult problems in the world, automatically people will respect us and the money will increase. And truly, that is what happened. We found some of the most difficult problems, we solved it, the respect in the market increased. And because we did not focus on money, we focused on capability. And gradually the market increased our rates, right? Today, we charge more than pretty much most of the companies do. Most companies would even dream of doing, right? And just last year, we won the Fast Company Award for the best. In fact, some of the companies we work with are like invested in by Elon Musk or invested in General Motors, Airbus, like those, we have created products that, even online on YouTube, we have software, we design software that's creating videos on YouTube that you guys will have seen, but you don't know that we have created the technology, right? And so we have done all of that stuff just because we said we want to be the best, right? And I think that's where I would say is like, for you want to start your company, you can either say, I want to make money, which is not going to be worth it. It's not a good idea. Or you can say, I want to change the world by doing A, B, and C, right? And if you do that, no matter how tough the time is, you will always believe in your vision and other people will believe you and come with you.
Yeah. All right. So I think there is one last request from the people. Are there any internship opportunities for the youngsters from your company?
Unfortunately, we are a very small team right now.
Yeah.
Right. And we're very distributed. With COVID, that's the biggest problem, is everybody spread out all over the world. Right? Yeah. And so when we take an intern, for us, we think it's a responsibility, because we say, we are teaching you and we're training you, right?
Yeah.
So with that said, I think I have one opportunity, which if you are interested, you can take it, right? One of the problems that I have, and see, entrepreneurship is about solving problems, right? So one of the problems that I have, right, or that I see in India, is people do not, there are a lot of hardworking people that do amazing things. Like even in your neighborhood, you might have the sweeper that comes every day. They don't take sick leave, yes, right? You might have your neighbor that is doing something amazing, right? But they're not, nobody's recognizing them, right? Yes. So what happens is there are a lot of people who are unsung heroes that do amazing work, right? But nobody recognizes them, right? Yes. So if somebody's interested in doing an internship, I would say this, right? What if, right, you create videos in your own community of these heroes, right? Recognizing these heroes, and let us put them together and acknowledge them, right? In that process, you will learn the art of creating videos You will learn the process of doing that stuff, and you learn the process of marketing, how other people can talk about it, right?
Yeah.
So any students that are interested, again, it might be 5, 1, 2, 0, doesn't matter, right? If you're interested in doing that, I'll be happy to kind of do a summer internship when you have your holidays, but I guess the summer internships, the holidays are already done. But again, this is an interesting opportunity because there's so many people working. If you're interested, let me know.
Yes, sure. We'll just put in a word to everyone, and I'll just quickly get back to you on that. But moreover, it was an amazing session, Prasad. Thank you so much for joining, sharing the insights. It is definitely inspiring for all our students, and also there are entrepreneurs, parents, so many. There is a mixture of crowd here. But I think the very thing that we have learned today is, the entrepreneurial skill set that you were mentioning, ownership, risk taking, having the determination, passion, trying to change the world. I think these are the things that is very much required. And I'm sure that you will listen to a lot of ideas the next time that when we meet. You will see a lot of change in the students as well.
No, thank you very much for having me here. I just want to say one thing. The biggest contributor to my success is that I failed in my 12th standard. Right?
Oh my God.
And in India, when you fail in something, everybody says this guy is good for nothing, right?
Okay.
And that was the most freeing opportunity for me. When I failed in my 12th standard, and for the next 1 year, everybody thought this guy is a waste, he's good for nothing. I had no expectations. I could do whatever I wanted. Nobody would be disappointed with me, right? I could take all kinds of risks and nobody would criticize me. It was the most amazing thing that happened to me, right?
Yes.
So what I will tell people is, see, failure is okay, right? It's just embrace your failure. Even if you fail, it doesn't matter. Fail 10th standard, fail 12th standard, doesn't matter, right? The whole life is ahead of you and you will succeed no matter what if you can take that failure in a positive mindset. So thank you very much, Pawan.
Thank you so much, Prasad. Thank you so much for doing this. And surely we'll keep in touch with the progress of the students, and our Metamorphosis School, already the admissions have begun. And already the students who got admitted, they have joined this session and they're all ready to take their entrepreneurial careers. And, we'll just keep you posted. Thank you so much for your time again. And I just wanted to quickly introduce the next speaker for the next week. We have Dr. Raja Papu, who is the head of research for Geetham University and also done several startups earlier in UK from London. And then he came back to India. He's teaching in Geetham University. He started his own entrepreneurial incubator inside the Geetham University and training the students. And now he's the head of Geetham University. He'll be taking our next session next Saturday again, 6 p.m. I'm going to, again, catch up with you all next Saturday, 6 p.m. Looking forward for the sessions. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining the session today. Looking forward for the next session. Take care, stay safe. Good luck. Thank you so much.